Okay, so I just wanted to welcome everyone to this session of the Illinois-Purdue Climate Webinar Series. Got the pleasure of introducing Dr. Laurie Nowatzke. She is the coordinator with USDA Midwest Climate Hub. Probably you may have heard of the Midwest Climate Hub before. Maybe you've worked with some of the folks there or have looked at their website. But we thought it'd be a good idea to have Laurie come on and talk about their resources and the services that they do. It's just a great resource for us to have. So, Laurie, welcome, and the floor is yours.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Dwayne, and thanks for those of you who are chiming in or joining in to listen. And I think there's a few enough people here so far that feel free to pop questions in the chat. I have chat open, or just feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. That's totally fine as well. So Dwayne asked me to talk a little bit about some of the tools and resources and partnerships that are available to support climate programming, especially in extension in the Midwest. Many of you have probably been aware lately of kind of the growth of interest in climate change related programming and resources and funding. And so there is kind of certainly a need at this point for kind of spreading the word about resources and data that are available to support development of that programming. So, oh, here we go. Let's see if I can get it to, here we go. So folks can use the raise hand feature or just type in the chat. Has anyone not heard of the USDA climate hubs? All right, I'll take that as a no, which is great. Sometimes we have a few folks who haven't heard about them, but we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, so they've been around for a while now, but certainly kind of ramping up capacity and expertise at this point with some new influxes in funding related to the Inflation Reduction Act and some other legislative support around climate mitigation and adaptation. So we have kind of three main areas of support and work. So the first is assessing and synthesizing the current science around climate change in agriculture and forestry as well. Also, a lot of outreach and education. We are often dubbed sort of the extension side of the Ag Research Service or the Forest Service, not to say we're extension by any means, but we follow kind of similar principles and kind of like guiding mission and all that to work with landowners and deliver science and current information to our stakeholders. Also technical support, so we have capacity to bring partners together, communicate between federal agencies and other stakeholders, and also provide support to technical service providers and ag advisors who interface with our Midwest farmers. I'll point out that, the Midwest Hub is based in Ames, Iowa, and we cover 8 states shown here in the purplish blue. We focus pretty much entirely on agriculture in the Midwest and provide some support to Northern Plains and Kentucky and Kansas as it relates to annual row crop production and some other crop production, since those hubs focus more on, forestry in the case of the Southeast and grazing and rangeland in the cases of the Plains hubs. I'll also point out that we are unique in the Midwest and the Northeast in that we have a sister hub based in Houghton, Michigan. So any of you who are interested in managed forests or timber or those kinds of production or natural resources, the Northern Forest Hub provides a lot of support around forestry, and they have a lot of expertise housed up there in Houghton, Michigan at Michigan Tech University. So I'll also add there are 10 hubs domestically, but there's one international climate hub that's based with the Foreign Agricultural Service in USDA, and they're based in DC and provide a lot of technical support around climate change and ag in developing nations. So I wanted to give a brief overview of climate change impacts, just bring us all kind of onto the same page. So in the Midwest especially, we're really adapting to bigger climate events and weather events, more extremes, and swings between conditions, much larger disaster issues, and also increased variability over time. And so really, any given county in the Midwest can experience a lot of uncertainty as we're moving more into this like climate change reality, and that can really severely impact land managers and farmers. So this graph on the right shows an inflation-adjusted assessment of billion-dollar disaster events that have happened. So this is collected by NOAA. So natural disasters that bring over $1 billion in infrastructure or crop damage or those kinds of issues. So one notable one that really showed up in 2020 and contributed to this large value here was the derecho in Iowa, which I believe also impacted Illinois to some extent. And so major crop damages there. So that's just one example of several that can lead to really acute, widespread problems. And those are increasing in prevalence year to year in every region of the United States. Agriculture really feels this, and we have the data on that. So this should say Illinois has the 7th highest RMA indemnity payments since 1989. And so, the Midwest in general has a lot of really just high value vulnerability to climate issues and weather issues. And so, generally speaking, across the Corn Belt, the largest payouts are usually attributed to drought events. But the most consistent year-to-year expected payouts are attributed to wetness, so increased precipitation or flooding in fields that can submerge our crops or impact germination. And so Illinois is certainly not the highest, but it is really kind of up there in the top 10, as well as Indiana, which I think I have Illinois here at 9.5. I believe Indiana was somewhere closer to $6 billion since 1989. And so the Corn Belt is certainly kind of among the highest value impacts when it comes to climate issues. So some major changes that have occurred over time for this part of the region are changes in the prevalence and timing of precipitation. So our precipitation totals year to year are generally going up, but we tend to see them concentrating towards certain times of year where we may not have had those issues before. So spring is definitely a major piece for that in Southern Illinois and Indiana, also Northern Illinois. Summer precipitation, we're seeing increases as well as fall. So it's really kind of a cross-season increase in precipitation, but also an increase in kind of the heavy rain events. So we're seeing that in like shorter bursts of rain events over those seasons. And so the Corn Belt itself has experienced some statistically significant and some pretty substantial changes. Of course, it kind of depends on which county you're in, but these are just general shifts in precipitation patterns that we're seeing year to year. Also, those kind of large rain events are punctuated by cycles or periods of drought. This is less pronounced in Indiana and Illinois than it is here where I am in Iowa, but we're still seeing kind of potentially a more rapid cyclical pattern with drought showing up. And so maybe shorter recover periods between drought conditions, increased length of drought conditions, depending on, this is a record going back to 2000. So it's still kind of some uncertainty around kind of the prevalence, but the point here is that with the increased precipitation and sort of ongoing or increased prevalence of drought, we're seeing kind of these larger swings that make it a little more difficult to adjust to your conditions year to year or predict what's going to happen in the coming season. So this graph, the top part is Illinois, shows so the higher the bar, the more percentage of area at that time was in a drought status, and Indiana is the lower part showing that over time as well. We're also seeing changes in temperature. So generally speaking, we have warmer conditions overall each year, but that's not happening equally in every season. So winters are certainly warming, and that's affecting the length of our growing seasons and kind of expected freeze times. Last freeze, first freeze in the fall and spring. And like I said, this is not, sorry, I need to change my titles here. This should say Illinois, but very similar patterns in Indiana as well. This kind of applies to the entire Corn Belt, where the warming, especially in the summer that we're experiencing, is not due to the daytime highs. We're not necessarily having hotter days in the summer, but we are having hotter nights. And so that can bring a lot of implications related to humidity changes and sort of livestock quality of life and viability, humidity impacting farm workers as well. And so that trend in the increase in overall summer temperature is really driven by the nighttime temperatures. This is also affecting kind of our evapotranspiration and soil moisture. And so in existing drought conditions, these nighttime temperatures can really drive overall crop water loss and soil moisture loss. And so that can be really concerning over time when in an already kind of challenging part of the year for maintaining crop moisture and soil moisture. So I wanted, as we've established, I wanted to kind of establish our overall impacts in the Midwest and in the Corn Belt from climate change and what we're experiencing already now. But really wanted to get into existing resources and tools and partnerships that are available to Extension and other kind of outreach efforts in the Midwest. So I'm going to start with resources and talk about, there are links in here and QR codes, but I'm going to, at the end, I'll upload, a Word document that has everything listed as well. So you don't need to scramble to take note of anything. But I'm going to start at kind of the broader scale. What are some resources that are available nationally that are kind of the authoritative data sources? Also some state and county level resources that'll help you drill down a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the training programs that might be available to you, and also partners throughout the whole thing. Who are the partners that are really key resources for folks to turn to. So from a national scale, NOAA and its National Centers for Environmental Information are really a major authoritative source for tracking climate and weather changes over time. So the Climate at a Glance is a really helpful tool. I did not know about Climate at a Glance until I moved into this position about 3 years ago. And I really wish I had known about it for so long, because it really is just such a goldmine of long-term weather conditions and climate conditions that you can look at down to your state, your climate division, your county, and really get some really tailored data visualizations for your area or your community. And so that's where I got those temperature graphs showing the nighttime and daytime temperatures. They have all sorts of metrics that you can track over time and see it going back to 1895, which is the earliest record for most of these metrics. Also, the U.S. Drought Monitor, if you're not aware of it, they provide updated drought status maps for every state and county weekly. So there are, every Thursday, new maps are released, and you can also look up maps for how things have changed over time, and it's really helpful for illustrating current conditions especially. Another resource that we make available is the Midwest Ag Focused Climate Outlook. So we developed that here at the USDA Midwest Climate Hub. It's about monthly. And what we do is the climatologists on our team take a lot of that visualized data of weather patterns or variables from the last 30 days or so, like temperature, precipitation, drought patterns, and we place it into the context of agricultural decision making and support. And so a lot of this climate data is available, but it's not really contextualized through an agricultural lens. And so that's what we attempt to do. We also pull anecdotes or evidence, stories from the ground from extension specialists that we partner with, or NRCS folks, others who are maybe hearing more about what's happening in specific areas and what kinds of challenges or recovery that we're seeing in different parts of the region, and explaining that as well. So it really gives a good regional level, but providing some of those localized stories and evidence to explain the current conditions. It also provides near and medium-term outlooks. So what's going to happen in the next month? What are the probabilities of certain higher precipitation or warmer weather over the next 3 months? So you can really look into the next part of the season as well and get a sense for what some of those larger climate patterns are suggesting. So here are some partners that we want everyone to be aware of. So, and many of you may already be aware of everyone that I'm about to list, but of course, first is Dwayne Friend, who's hosting this webinar, an important resource for climate information for extension in Illinois, but certainly around the region as well. We also have Trent Ford, who's an Illinois state climatologist and works really closely with Extension at Illinois. So his website is listed on the handout that I'll post in the chat here as well. Really, really just a helpful person for understanding, or also for coming to speak to certain events and things to provide context on current conditions or future climate change. Beth Hall is the state climatologist located at Purdue for Indiana, and also runs the Midwestern Regional Climate Center, which is a really important partner to be aware of as well. So both the Indiana State Climate Office and that Midwestern Regional Climate Center provide a lot of so much data and maps and information, as well as several of the tools that I'm going to talk about that we've co-developed with them, which I'll share in just a moment. So really just a treasure trove of information. We've worked with several partners to develop state-specific vulnerability assessments for agriculture. So the Illinois one is shown here. We also have an Indiana one. The impetus for putting these together was really that a few states, at the time we started these, a few states had some reports or assessments around how climate change is affecting agriculture, but most states didn't have that resource. So interestingly, Illinois and Indiana are examples of states which have done a lot of that work before, but the other states in our region, really, we just wanted to kind of bring them up to that level a little bit, provide a consistent, concise report and data analysis for every state in our region, plus Kentucky, to kind of provide a baseline set of resources and point readers to other resources as well. So in the document that I'll share, we have the link to all of these reports for all 9 states that we're doing these reports for, and they're pretty short. They're about 2,000 words, and they're meant to be kind of a first dip into how historical climate change has impacted agriculture in the state, what we expect to see in the future, sort of towards the end of the century for each of these states, and how that might affect agriculture in the future. And then we had, a lot of local partners, many of which were extension, and university faculty provide input on potential adaptation strategies that might be considered. And it's meant to be pretty high level, but kind of a first pass at some of this information. Here I've linked the Illinois climate assessment, which includes a chapter specific to agriculture. So there is a lot more technical work behind that. I mean, all of them are technical, but there's certainly more detail in the Illinois-based one, as well as Indiana's state assessment, which they have an agriculture vulnerability assessment that's a much more in-depth more academic document that provides a lot of that technical details as well. But in the end, all of these kind of provide similar background on the issues and similar interpretation of what we expect to see in the future. So definitely worth checking all of these out. There are several kind of tools that allow us to drill down into the local level. So I've talked about kind of national resources and data, state level resources, and then there's many that we worked on with the Midwestern Regional Climate Center to take climate data from stations or modeled gridded data sets and place that in the, sorry, my dog is barking in his sleep. I don't know if you can hear that. And place that, oh, I pulled these from an Iowa talk last week and I should have moved that square over, but the point is still the same. It places a lot of that climate data through the lens of agricultural decision making. So for example, this tool is called the freeze date tool, and I'll provide the link to that as well. And it establishes for each county the average first frost in the fall and the average date for the last freeze in the spring, and tries to understand how that, what trends do we see in those dates? Is it shifting earlier or later for some counties? It also allows you to tick a box that removes the statistically, or only shows the statistically significant trends, and it also shows us growing season. So this map is the change in growing season over time. And so you see on the key that the darker the green, the longer the growing season has become, so up to 10 days per year. So the darkest green counties are seeing 10 more days per year, per decade. Every decade, there are 10 more days in the annual growing season on average. And so some counties are really seeing a lot of winter warming that's driving that change. And so on one hand, you can see opportunities for changes in cropping systems, but on the other hand, there's a lot of challenges related to pests overwintering, as well as diseases, and if there's specialty crop production, maybe a mismatch between pollinator prevalence and the bloom times, and so, or vulnerability of those crops to an anomalous freeze that comes up randomly. And so certainly a lot of negative impacts that might come along with potential positive opportunities with a longer growing season. I'll add before I move on too that two other tools we've developed with the Midwestern Regional Climate Center this past year include a soil temperature climatology tool, as well as a chilling hours visualization. So the soil temperature one just takes soil temperature data that's publicly available, but it looks specifically at that threshold, the 50-degree threshold in the fall and the spring. And so again, taking that climate data, packaging it in a way that impacts agricultural decision making. The third one, and again linked on the sheet that I'll provide, is the chilling hours tool, and it shows how our number of chilling hours each winter is changing year to year, and that can be really impactful for production of tree fruits and some other specialty crops. So another kind of like potentially hyper-localized resource is county quick guides on climate. So these were developed by the Southwest Climate Hub and some NRCS partners. And it was really driven towards providing NRCS county staff with this sort of snapshot of climate conditions, past climate change, future projected climate change for their county. So this one I show here is the county I'm in, Story County, Iowa, but it follows the same format for every single county in the contiguous United States. And so a huge amount of resource, big resource there for getting county level information. So just a quick note about some training programs that might be available to you if you're interested in really digging deeper and doing some professional development around climate programming. The first is a climate adaptation and mitigation fellowship We're kind of underway with our current cohort, but we do hope to offer this up in the future as well with future cohorts. This is led out of University of Maine, and it's currently available in the Northeast and Midwest. So what we're doing is we're working with farmers and ag advisors. So many of those are extension or NRCS or private ag advisors to go through a formal climate training curriculum, climate communications, and then they are actually paired for the whole 2-year program. So an ag advisor is paired with a farmer in the fellowship, and they work through on-farm climate risk planning, and also have the option of implementing their plan as well over the course of the 2-year program if they're able to. And so it really provides a lot of professional development for the ag advisors in the region, connects them closely with farmers, and also provides on-farm planning support for the farmers involved. And so that helps them approach climate issues from an adaptation perspective, like how can I reduce the impact of climate change on my farm or deal with extreme weather events, but it also supports mitigation. So how can I reduce my greenhouse gas emissions or increase carbon sequestration on my farm to reduce my own impacts on global climate change? Other programs that are available to you as well, and Dwayne would be a resource here, is for those of you in Illinois, is an ongoing online climate change course for extension professionals in Illinois. I'm not sure about availability in Indiana, but I know several states are working to adapt that for their own extension professionals. And so we do hope that it'll spread and be available in some form to Indiana folks as well. Others might include Dwayne's master, our climate stewards program, and there's also several others provided by just kind of general extension programming support provided out of Michigan from Monica Jean and North Central Climate Collaborative, which is a regional partnership. And so there's plenty of ways to get involved and support your work, get connected with the climate specialists in the region. We also contact me if you're interested in joining our monthly call with extension specialists. So this is a once a month call where we just share what's going on around the region, hear from other extension folks and the state climatologists to kind of build that network and also get that on the ground perspective that feeds back into some of our other products. And so certainly reach out to me if you have any interest in getting involved in any of these potential opportunities. Last thing I wanted to share, so this is part of my dissertation research from a few years ago, and so this is specific to Iowa farmers, but I would suspect it transfers over into many Corn Belt farmers' perspectives as well. But what we did was we took we gathered responses specific to climate change and global warming anxieties or concerns among Iowa farmers and compared that to some national statistics that are put out from Yale each year. And so the blue bars represent Iowa farmers in 2021 and kind of how they fell on this spectrum from dismissive of climate change to alarmed about climate change. And the red bars were the national estimate for 2020. And what we found was that in Iowa, at least, our farmer respondents, and this was with about 1,500 farmers, so a pretty large sample, they felt it was fairly opposite what we see of the national average. And that could be just the farming background or the rural context. It could also just be other confounding factors like age or gender or things. But and we're going to look more into that. But my point here is just that, you know, we have a diverse set of perspectives in the farming community around climate change, and I think we're all kind of aware of that. There's even a diverse set of perspectives among extension and other technical service providers and ag. And so we, you know, I wanted to point this out just to say that, you know, oftentimes I come in and talk about climate change because I'm with the Climate Hub, but I recognize that not every person working with farmers or out in their communities is going to be, feel like climate change should be the key topic of discussion. But just, there's lots of folks working in this area who take other tacks and other approaches. And so I think my goal is to empower our partners and Extension and others with the information around climate change and the resources that they have, and understand that you might package it in a different way or explain it in a different way, and that's absolutely a valid approach as well. And so there's lots of value systems and perspectives in our region, and that's kind of a reality we're working with. So just wanted to point that out. And I'm curious to see how this chart might be updated in the next few years. But with that, I'll leave it for questions. Again, my name is Laurie Nowatzke, and my contact is here. Also, our director, Dennis Toddy, is a climatologist, former Extension and state climatologist in South Dakota. So he's just a really great person to contact if you have any questions, technical questions, or partnership discussions, any of that. So yeah, we're here to help in your work and provide support. And with that, I will see if anyone has any questions, and I'll find that document to put in the chat. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Laurie. Great information there. While some of the others may be thinking of questions, I've got a couple that I'll go ahead and pose to you.
Sure.
So first of all, you were talking about some of the different groups that you work with. Is there one particular group of people that you get the most requests from? Is it producers? Is it NRCS? Is it what kind of?
That's a good question, Dwayne. I haven't thought about that, but well, I guess I have. So I would say Extension and NRCS are probably our closest sets of partners. So Extension, that's been the case for a long time, and part of that is our staff's history with Extension. So, as I mentioned, our director Dennis used to be Extension, and I was Extension before coming to USDA as well. So, so we just kind of brought those relationships along with us. Also, we didn't have, until recently, we really didn't have a lot of capacity. So when I started 3 years ago, it was just Dennis and me. That was the Midwest Climate Hub. Since then, we've grown to about 13 people, and we're in the process of hiring 6 more. Some of those are temporary, some are more permanent, but I'm just making that point to say that we have built more capacity to provide more of these services directly. But historically, we've kind of had to take a train the trainer approach. So we work more closely with those who then interface with farmers and have that capacity. So NRCS came along more recently as a really close partner. We've always partnered with NRCS, but it's become a much more bolstered relationship, and we get a lot of requests now to provide technical guidance and trainings for NRCS now. In fact, we just gave one in for all of Minnesota NRCS yesterday. And that really comes out of this current administration's focus on climate mitigation and the Inflation Reduction Act. So NRCS is really striving to get a lot of money spent on farms for climate mitigation. And so the climate hubs were sort of tasked with providing a lot of support along the way. So all that to say, we do direct outreach with farmers, and it tends to be through extension events or field days or webinars like this. Well, I guess this is not farmer audience, but you know what I'm saying. But we have more capacities to support extension and other organizations that do more of that direct interface with farmers, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And then the other one that I had is I know that in some cases, some of the farm organizations, I guess, for want of a better term, actually hires private meteorology climate providers to provide them with some of that information. do those folks come to you sometimes and get that information?
That's a good question. I think I can think of a few examples, but I don't think it's that typical. We have given some talks for some industry partners, like Pivot Bio is one in Iowa, or at least nearby, or like Cargill, done some panels at some of their larger meetings. We do partner with some, climatologists or related experts at some of those organizations, like Nutrient or others, but from kind of a research and outreach perspective. But I'd say that's not the norm, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Do we have other questions? We got a small but powerful audience today. So, here we go. Do you
Awesome.
offer any assistance with carbon sequestration monitoring and measurement for farmers?
Oh, that's interesting. So this is coming up more. We don't specifically, but we would certainly be able to connect you with folks who can help with that. We do have several NRCS partners who are thinking a lot about this and like carbon intensity and some other things. We also have relationships with a lot of the research farms that might want to kind of do samples and testing on working farms. And so if this is something that, I guess, Whitney, does this come up for you with some farmers in your area?
It does come up, and I think that there have been some farmers that are working with some of the climate smart grants that are doing that work, but they're been having trouble accessing expertise and to meet the requirements.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I would say I'd be interested in chatting with some of our research staff in ARS if you need additional support there, or there might be, I don't know, Dwayne, have you tackled this before, like identifying contacts for this?
No, we have some nonprofit organizations such as the Illinois Sustainable Ag Partnership that has really dove into the carbon sequestration aspect of things. And although that's been more of just trying to educate folks on carbon markets and those kind of things, but
Sure.
That's one of the things that we could check on. Folks on campus work some in that area as well. So, if we needed to find out more about that, I think we could do so.
Yeah, I'll definitely write that down, Whitney. And I'm also thinking of there's like, Practical Farmers of Iowa, which does have membership in other states as well, that might be have some kind of peer support for that, for identifying folks with that expertise as well, or they might have some in-house expertise as well. So yeah, thanks for that question. Gonna force me to get to the bottom of that too, because we've started to hear more about kind of the carbon intensity and carbon sequestration questions. And I put the list of resources in the chat, so if folks want to download that before the call ends so that you have access to that. And you can, I also included a lot of the QR codes, so if it's resources you want to include on your own materials, those QR codes should work for you as well. Any other questions or feedback too?
I don't see anything else in the chat, so unless somebody shouts out here in the next few seconds, I want to thank you again. Again, great information. Glad to have you on for the webinar. Again, once I send the recording in to our campus communications folks, they'll close caption it and then they'll put it up in our YouTube extension channel. It usually takes a couple of weeks for that, but then that will be available to everyone. So, Laurie, Dr. Nowatzke, I thank you once again for
Perfect. Thank you for
being
having
with us
me.
today.
This was
And
wonderful.
everybody have a good evening.
Great. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dwayne. Safe travels.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.